Hi, this is Trevor Conquergood. Welcome to this week's RNK Software Club's video for the week. And the topic for this week is about editing designs. And specifically, the question that we often get asked is, how can I take out part of the design and just use a piece of it? And I guess there's more than one way that you could approach that, but it all kind of starts when you open your design. So I'll click on Open Design right now, and I'm just going to browse through like a folder on my computer where I have a bunch of embroidery designs, and these are specifically embroidery designs that are not Floriani WAF files. They're like machine formats like PES or JEF or whatever format you want. It's all kind of the same thing. They're based on stitches. And so when I select a design and I'm going to open it, there's a box that you can choose Convert to Outlines. And I'm not going to check that. We're going to leave it unchecked and say Open. And so when you don't check that box off, it tells the software that it can simply open the design as it is, and every color is displayed as its original stitches. In other words, if you look at the sequence view over on the side and you expand one of the colors, you'll see that they all just simply say stitches. And so people often, want to select part of a design, and they may be, wanting to sort of take one little piece out of here and use it somewhere else. Maybe you do or don't want the outline, or you just want one color, multiple colors. And I think a lot of times people get sort of confused when they want to select the shapes, because a lot of times, and I guess this design is kind of not a great example because all of the colors are actually separated, and so you could click in here and get the pink of the little donut, and then hold down your control key and click the blue sprinkles on the donut, and go back one color and hold down your control key and select the little part of the donut. And so in this case it was pretty easy to select out that part of that design. Where I think it can be harder, and so maybe even just to open up a different example, I'll say open again. Here's a design that has 5 different redwork ladies, and they're all one color. And so this might be a better example of what I think kits people, because they'll bring it in as stitches, as I just did, and then it says it's all stitches. And so how do you select just one of those ladies? Here, let's rotate them by 90 degrees, and so they're kind of facing the right way. When you try to select it, it selects the whole block of stitches. And so this is where I think a lot of times people will go a different route. And when they choose open, and then they open that same redwork lady design, they'll turn on the Convert to Outlines. Now, Convert to Outlines allows the software to read the original stitches. And when it does that, it creates shapes, artwork that we could then generate new stitches from. And so now if I look in here, I can see that there's not just 5 redwork ladies. The software can be, tricked at times, because it's looking for a pattern, and when it sees forward, it understands that that's a run stitch. But some of these parts of this design also kind of went back and forth, and at times the software might get confused. It's not sure what kind it is, and so it starts a new sort of shape. And at the end of the day, sure, you can now select, it's all grouped together, so ungroup. So by using this one technique, which is Convert to Outlines, you can separate the redwork ladies, and that is correct. And it's not wrong to do it that way. The only thing is, understand that when you convert the original stitches into shapes, that it does allow the software to make new shapes and therefore new stitches. And so you'll be dealing with stitches that were made by the Floriani software as opposed to the original stitches. When I didn't really mean to change the stitching of the redwork ladies in any way, I simply wanted to take one of the ladies out of the group. And so this is kind of where I was trying to get to, is stitch-based editing. So the first time we opened up the red work ladies, we didn't choose that open, convert to objects when we opened, and it leaves it all as stitches. So in that case, the design will never change the stitches. They'll never be, you could, resize them, but it will simply scale the original stitches bigger or smaller, not generating new stitches. And sometimes that's more important to us because we already have a really beautiful design. We're not trying to change it. We just want to take a piece of it away. And so this is the point. When you want to do that, you would change from your regular select tool that can select this whole group, and you would change down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 tools to the stitch tool. And when you go to the stitch tool, you can select stitches. Now, as soon as I turned on stitch tool, it sort of changes the way that the software works. And the first thing you might notice is the slow redraw button went to the bottom from the top. And it acts a little bit differently because now you can actually bring your stitches, with this slider to a certain point and say that's going to be the left-hand margin, and then start moving the right-hand margin kind of backwards and forwards like this. So this allows you to kind of say, well, I'll get rid of the end of the design and the beginning of the design, or, okay, don't even use that at all. An even simpler way to do all of this is simply click on this, click on your stitch edit tool, and then click to drag a box around one of the ladies, which will select all of the stitches that were inside of your box. And now you could click on, let's say, delete to get rid of it. Okay, maybe that was the red work lady that you wanted. So undo and go the other way. Select all these ones and then click on delete to get rid of those ones. So, and obviously you can get rid of the ones in the middle too. Just click undo. So if you really wanted the red work lady on this side, then I guess you would select that red work lady and then press delete, and then select the other 3 red work ladies and press delete. So that's kind of the cool thing about the stitch editing tool, is you can easily get rid of parts of a design. Now, while I'm at it, I can also get closer to this design and see all of the stitches. So notice when I move around where my cursor is, it snaps to stitch points. And you can move them if you want to and find those stitch points and change the design in some way if you want to. You can also click on these stitch points and then click on delete to delete one individual stitch point, or right click over top of a stitch point to choose to insert new points either before or after that point. And so if I say insert after, I could click and click and click and click and come back here and click and add sort of a little circle or something. And if you want to stop adding points, like a lot of things in our software, right click, and that will finish that task. But as long as this tool is lit up brightly colored orange, that means you can use the stitch editing tool to either select stitches or delete stitches. I'm sorry, my power cord is loose and it's making beeps, so that is not the software, that's my computer beeping. Sorry about that. So the other thing is, this can be helpful to turn on the needle points. So a lot of times I think people will work in 3D, which is fine. You can do all of this in 3D too, and notice that it kind of highlights the point, when you go over them and they highlight, and then you can click and move them or delete them as I showed. But what I'm saying is if you turn off 3D and you turn on here, it's stitch points. They can be on and off. So if you turn them on, then you can see the actual stitch points that are there to make it easier to find them and move them. So you know exactly where they are because they become little dots on your lines. And so if you want to just go in and clean up a design, maybe you thought it looked messy in a certain area, some of the points were misaligned for where you wanted them, you could go in and clean it up very, very, you could get very specific with your zooming in and really tidy up a design, or remove a few stitches from an area that seemed to have a hard spot. I think that once you kind of learn to use the stitch editing tool, you might find that there's a lot of times where it's one of the best solutions, and certainly one of the most easy solutions. And so coming back to the first design that I had open that had all the different pieces in it, if you wanted to, select a portion of this design and you were in your stitch editing tool, notice in the stitch editing tool, there is actually two options. There's like a rectangular selection and a lasso selection. So if you just really wanted to get the ice cream cone out of everywhere, you could click and drag, I guess, to draw the lasso around those stitches. Now, I will say here that I can see the need for some improvements to the software. Like, for example, it'd be nice right now if I could click copy and then go to a new workspace and paste that in. Because right now, I think my option is kind of to go the opposite way and say, well, if you just want only the ice cream cone, I'll probably have to select all the rest of the stuff and delete those stitches and just be left with the ice cream cone. So maybe we'll put in some requests for kind of future ideas for our stitch editing tool, but for now, it's a very simple tool. Just know that you can click at any time back on your select tool to be done selecting that way, and now you're back to selecting, as you normally do, one color at a time or one shape at a time. You can easily still click on that little part of that ice cream cone and change the color of the ice cream to be a green Spumoni ice cream cone or whatever you like. But like I was saying, if you want to edit the stitches, you click into your stitch editing mode, and then when you're in your stitch editing mode, you can hover over to select individual stitches, or you can click and drag with your lasso or click and drag with your rectangle to select all of the stitches that are inside of that lasso. And so I hope that was an interesting video for you guys, and how you can use the stitch editing tool to help you to get rid of a part of a design that you don't want and be left with just the right parts. Now, the one thing I also should add at this point was, if you go in and you open up, for example, a PES file, as I did with this Redwork Ladies, and originally there was a whole group of them, but in this one, remember, I deleted all of them and I'm only left with one. Well, if I click save right now, it will save with the same name as it did before, and essentially, I will have lost the other 4 ladies. So this is a time when, of course, remember, I can always go undo to put them back, but I don't know how many times I'll have to click undo until I get my ladies back. There they are. So I guess what I'm trying to say here is be careful that you don't open up a design, rotate it, go into stitch edit, and select off a part of that design, and then delete it with your delete key. And then, there's a few little stitches there that left that I might have to select as well and delete. But once you're done, don't just click save. In fact, what might be smart, and again, I'm going to undo to put my stitching back, is to, as soon as you open up your design, before you even mess with it, to kind of make it fail safe, go File, Save As, and give it a new name. You can even save it as a WAF file and then make a PES later. Doesn't really matter. Just give it a new name, because if you give it a new name, you'll never sort of lose the original file. So that's a little tip for you guys when you're opening PES files. So sure, I can save it as a WAF. We'll call it, Less Ladies. And it's in the same folder as before. And so now that I've saved it, sure, go into stitch edit mode, click and drag to select off and get rid of those 2 ladies, and press delete. And then when you're happy with it, say save, and it's called Less Ladies, and it's a WAF file. Now, if you want to stitch that out, you'll have to also make a stitch format, File, Save As, and then choose the format to be whatever machine format that you use. And so now I'll have Less Ladies PES, but the important thing is, if I ever want to go back and click on open, I still have the original Redwork ladies that had all 5 of them. And so it's just a little tip, because when you open up a design and you make an edit to it and click save, it could actually save right over the original. And so it's best to, I think, when you're going to make changes to a design and know that you are, start before you even make your first change by doing a file and save as, give it a new name, then make your edits, and you're good to go. So those are some tips for you guys for this week on making edits to the designs you already own. I hope you enjoyed this week's video, and until next week, have a wonderful day, and bye for now.